Today I will try something a little bit different, I think, to the normal research talks. I will try to give a bit bigger argument about where the field is going and what the impact of LLMs means for all of us. First, we have a lab. We're at Stanford. There's some amazing postdocs here. They sit over there if you want to talk to them. I'm sure they'd be delighted. Okay, so in case you missed it, we now have machines that are better than humans at a number of different things. You know this. You might also know this. It now costs between 100 million and $1 billion to train these things. This is, you see the 2021 data here. The highest bar you see up there is about 10 million. But because of this order of magnitude of what it costs to train these frontier models, academia can no longer train them, right? So they're now exclusively trained in industry. There's still occasionally attempts in academia. What academia can do, it can take leaked models, and then it can low-rank approximate them, like Llama 2, and stuff like that, and work with that and spin up the Vicuña line. So it's not that academia is done, it's just that the frontier models are no longer coming out of academia. And so how are we dealing with this? What does this, where does this leave us? If you've gone through a bookstore in the last half year, you realize that there's a new section now, which is the AI section. I don't know how many books you've tried to read of this genre. I read a few. The best one that I found is The Coming Wave by Mr. Suleiman, who is Google DeepMind and is trying to conceptualize this. And here's a nice framing, which is that what large language models do is allow us to act on information. So with social media and big data, that gave us the freedom to distribute data. What large language models do is you can now take any unstructured text data and, for example, turn it into numbers. You can score it. You have universal research assistants that can prepare your data, feed it into dashboards. And as such, they are an omni-use meta technology. So they're a technology that combines with other technologies. And that may lead to a Cambrian explosion of secondary technologies. I thought this was a little bit silly until I saw this in companies that I'm advising, when two Stanford dropout students who have no experience in natural language processing suddenly spin up a company in 7 months that ingests videos, extracts cognitive states, emotions, and gives mental health feedback to people. 7 months ago, they didn't know what code was. And now these products are deployed and in the App Store. And that's because of LLMs. This is because of OpenAI function calls being able to do this. So ever since I've seen this, I'm beginning to believe that this is a worthwhile framing. And it integrates into society widely. And this wavefront is not dissipating yet through the different societal systems. So one question here, if the wave is coming, does the wave look like this? Or does the wave look like this? And you may have seen this before in two camps. There's the positive view, and you've seen positive example. We have tailored tutoring, simpler access to healthcare, scalable healthcare for the global south. We'll have universal translation. You can build startups much more easily, right? The barriers to entry to generate value from ideas has lowered tremendously. But then there's the negative view, which you may have seen in the AI dilemma. It's the race to the bottom of the brainstem. Now you have 1,000-layer neural networks pointed at the 7 layers in your cortex, racing for your dopaminergic arousal. So how do we deal with these two realities? So just trying to look at facts, it's certainly the case that some jobs are very AI exposed. So the way you can do these calculations is you can decompose a job function into skills, and then see how much these skills are replaceable with AI. And if you look down here to text preparers, financial quantitative analysis, writers and authors, 100% exposure, AI exposure. If you plot this against income, you see that the more money people have, the more money people make in these jobs, the more likely they are to be replaced. The higher up the knowledge work, the more likely to be replaced. And then as my personal commentary, I certainly think there are short-term risks. We're going to have the first GPT election 2016 was the real first social media election. We didn't have ecosystems. We had threat actors in the space. Remember Russia? The social media companies weren't set up for this, right? In 2020, we had an immune system, right? The teams were set up. The spread and reach of messages was contained. 2024 will be the first time that our electoral processes are tested by this new technology. And as I keep telling people, I think we're waiting for the first super hack, given that every email that is trying to elicit your data can now be a spear phishing email, and you can take leaked passwords and hack at an industrial scale now with these artificial intelligences. This is a shout out to get a password manager if you don't have one. And don't reuse your passwords. So how should we think about this? We're obviously in these two worlds, and we've been here before, right? Those of us who've been around for the big data sort of wave of developments 10 years ago recognize this, right? There's the techno-optimist camp, that tech creates prosperity for all, and disruption is desirable and necessary, right? And it's sort of exemplified by the "why don't we just" person that shows up at your pitch session or your happy hour with some tech idea. This has now been critiqued, I think, quite coherently. My favorite critique of this is in a book called What Tech Calls Thinking by Adrian Daub, who's also at Stanford, mostly a historian. And he analyzes that there is a certain discursive schema to this discourse of innovation, of founders, of techno-optimism. Tech founders are in perpetual adolescence. They drop out of school before completing their school. They gesture at anti-capitalism. They are using old motifs, but they dress them up in a new hoodie. And on this view, disruption and innovation obscure reckless and unethical behavior. And the implicit meta-claim of this sort of techno-optimist framing is that everything is new, that you cannot think it in historical context, that there's no path dependence to what has come before. I thought this was particularly salient framing because of Mr. Sam Fried. Perpetual adolescence, yes. Gestural anti-capitalism, right? He dresses in a way that evokes gestural anti-capitalism, literally wears a hoodie. I'm going to give him a double check for this. Right? And very much, no, this isn't a Ponzi scheme or bank fraud. This is the future of distributed wealth, right? This is the framing. So if this is the critique of techno-optimism, you know the critique of techno-pessimism as well. It's ruining society, breaks our children, and the robots will take over, right? You've heard these arguments too. So what do these two views have in common, both techno-pessimism and techno-optimism? Is they're the techno-determinist. They put the agency for change in society with the technology, not with the humans. And so this is a question I've heard here quite a bit. So are you worried or hopeful about AI? The correct answer to this question is that is the wrong question, right? Because the question is about humans, not about what technology does to us. So if we unpack this a little bit, I think here's a way of thinking about this. So we can think about discourses that survey the past and anticipate the future, that are specific or generic. And you've seen these sort of big history accounts that survey the past in academia. We're very comfortable as academics with surveying the past in a specific way, right? Looking for mediators and meta-analyses, getting very, very detailed, but all of it in hindsight. Generic concerns about the future in academia, you've read them in papers, more researchers needed. This is under-researched, right? I mean, these sentences. Techno-optimism and techno-pessimism also fall into this bucket of lacking specificity, making statements about the future. My challenge to us all is to think about what's in this box, what anticipates the future and is specific. So let me give you an example, right? So childhood and development. Soon we'll be in a world where kids will grow up with super intelligences in Alexa speakers that are smarter than mommy and daddy? What will that do to family relationships? What will that do to the development of identity in kids as they grow up, how they conceptualize their own intelligence, the relationship to technology? We'll soon be in a situation where an entire cohort of AI natives will have grown up with these pararomantic relationships with AIs. Did you know that Replica can sext you? There was a lot of backlash when this came out, and now Replica is back on with this functionality. It's by far their most lucrative. In political psychology, right, we have automated mass persuasion systems. We've run a study ourselves where we have humans generate persuasive messages, we have AI generate persuasive messages, but if you let the humans shortlist from what the AI has suggested, then you outperform both. And that's sort of sometimes known as A to Z testing, right? You can do that automatically with A/B testing. Different domains in cognitive psychology, we now have simulacra of the human mind that we can investigate and study. We know humans from social psychology, the fundamental attribution error. I attribute what I do to my personality, if it's good. If it's bad, I attribute it to the environment. If I see something that you do that's bad, I attribute it to your personality, right? How will that play out in a world where we all have AI systems that are sitting with us in our meetings, that read all our emails, that have years and years of context about what we'd like to say? If I see my AI misperform, is that gonna be me or is that gonna be technology? If I see your AI misperform, is that gonna be you or is that gonna be technology? We can make predictions about this. We don't have to be blind and agnostic about how these things will come to play out. In clinical psychology, we see that people are taking to these systems to get advice. How's this going to backfire, right? These might also be tools for mass reassurance for medical conditions where reassurance is really not what you want, right? Anxiety disorders, that sort of thing. And then building well-being, you've seen some of the work of Liz Dunn. We've done similar work that now shows that you can take old interventions to build well-being and use chatbots, and they become much more enjoyable. Okay, so where are we? What's the larger argument? There are techno-optimist and techno-pessimist narratives that are very available and that have spokespeople on both sides who sell books on their basis. Don't fall for them. Humans are humans and will continue to be humans, and there is path dependence. You can predict the future from the past. You can look at previous technological upheavals and see what happened. And as social scientists, in our domains of expertise, in our lanes, we can make specific predictions that we can prepare for. So how is the community actually engaging with this, preparing for this? We see a pattern again that we've seen before 10 years ago when the big data papers came out, which is that there's basically 3 stages of paper that the academic community goes through. The first one is that large language models are coming. The second one, these are commentaries. The second stage tend to be, I call them gee whiz papers or technology demonstrators. And I've written them, many in the room have written them, right? And then the third stage, one gets too much later, are papers that actually advance theory and understand humans. So let me show you some examples. So this is what stage 1 looked like in the big data age. These are papers in New England Journal of Medicine and in Science, right? Big data is coming, get ready for big data. We have the same happening again with the large language models. Large language models are coming to psychology, they're coming to medicine, right? Those are these commentaries. And then the second stage are these gee whiz papers, these technology demonstrators. Can you believe it can do this, right? Twitter predicts heart disease, Facebook predicts personality, Twitter predicts the stock market. And that's currently where we're at with the large language models, right? We see these, do you believe it has theory of mind, right? Sorry, Michal, I don't mean to. Right, I mean, you have these, right? They generally get rushed, right? They get rushed out. The 3-pager to PNAS is particularly popular for this format. And then, of course, eventually we will get to these stage 3 papers that are actually not about the technology, they're about humans, right? So it's not going to be Twitterology in a paper like this. It's really using papers to better understand humans. So let me give you an example here from Sandra Matz that I really like, which is you can predict the personality based on what people write on Facebook, and then you can look at the differential between predicted personality and your self-reported personality as a measure of your authenticity, and then confirm that it predicts higher well-being, right? So you've used the technology and all these pipelines to measure something about people that otherwise you couldn't measure, and you make a claim about people rather than technology. And so that's what we're going to get to with LLMs as well. But we're not quite there yet, I think, because we're still in stages 1 or 2 in the scientific discourse. So, right, this summarizes it. We're working our way through these different stages. We're just getting ready for these real insight papers. But I made it seem up to this point in the talk that we actually have a chance of predicting the future as a scientific community. That is an implausible thing to say. I think we can foresee first-order risks, but I propose that there's a second class of risks, which I call second-order risks, right? So going from this to this, unforeseen, unknown unknowns that come out of these new meta-technologies, come out of these new technologies that get combined and their impact on society. So let me give you an example, right? We already talked about this a little bit. There's upheaval in the labor market. We have these AI natives that are growing up with these super intelligences. Many people will feel left behind. And now the second order concern is that that creates a kind of unhappiness and discontent in the population that then could be mined by populists. Imagine an anti-AI party in 5 to 10 years from now, or one of the 2 major camps in the US adopting it as a platform because it polls well. We've seen this before. So this is data from that preceded the 2016 Trump election. And what we're plotting here is how much people voted for Donald Trump over and above Republican baselines compared to how unhappy they were as measured by where do you think your life satisfaction is going 5 years from now. This is across 3,000 counties. This is the strongest correlation I've ever seen at the county level for a psychological variable. Normally these are 0.3, these are not 0.8. And this has gone 27 robustness checks. It's an excellent paper George Ward has written with us. So that sets up a tension, no? I mean, we know that with the right populist messaging, you can take unhappiness in the population and turn it into electoral choice. We've seen a lot of democratic backsliding around the world. Because this technology is so general, this might mean this trend is global. It might not be just the US. It might be all over the world, where we have the potential for a wave of populism that comes out of the AI disruption. So that's hard to predict, right? I can paint a story here, but I don't know if this will happen. So how do we prepare? What should we do? I would like to offer you a thought experiment. Imagine that it's the year 2010. Social media has just come out. You don't know what it's going to do. What do you wish you would have done in 2010? So you can't predict the future, but you could have probably decided it might be a good idea to measure the health of our youth. It might be a good idea to monitor the sleep of young people, the anxiety levels in the population. It might be a good idea to monitor social relationships, right? And so every particular domain, every social science domain should start thinking about what is a sentinel data set that can capture some of these changes. And I think the AI use index is a good example for this. We need pre-data, not just post-data, right? We want to understand these phenomena as they're happening, not just in the back mirror when we see their consequences in our political system. Okay, so what did I say today? There are simplistic narratives in the space. I think we can do better. As the social sciences, there's a standard format on how we respond to these kinds of changes. Just keep an eye out for these patterns. I think all of us within our domains of expertise can anticipate with specificity, and in fact, I think it's our job to do this, to not just be generic, but actually sit down for an afternoon and try to sketch out, okay, what are the things that I actually know about humans that will be obvious in hindsight in a few years, will have happened with AIs. And then we need to cover up our own ignorance, right? Capture the unknown unknowns, set up these sentinel data sets. Thank you very much.